Hey guys, welcome back. So in this video, I wanted to branch out from the norm and start to cover some different characters and different storylines as well. And so in the previous video, I mentioned I was going to do some Spider-Man and some Venom coverage. And it goes without saying the two characters cross over quite a bit. But what I'm going to do is episodes on each of them separately, so the spills will be focused on the individual character. And so with this one kicking it off, I wanted to start off talking about Spider-Man and his first encounter with the Vulture right after Civil War. And that's mainly because in a month or so, we're going to have a movie coming out that has Spider-Man encountering the Vulture right after Civil War. It only made sense, so we'll check it out after this. Okay, so this particular encounter between Spider-Man and the Vulture takes place not too long after Civil War. And for those who aren't familiar with it in the comics, the Civil War was over the Superhuman Registration Act. And under this act, every superhero had to register their secret identity to give the government control and also to have accountability for casualties. And of course, with those two options, there was conflict. Iron Man led the side that was for the act, setting rules in place for more restraint and accountability. And Captain America was the opposite because he believed it took away free will. And so initially, Spider-Man sided with Iron Man. He was the first one to reveal his identity. And that part of Secret War has a story within a story, if you will, about Spider-Man, and that series is called Spider-Man Unmasked. And that storyline more so goes over the detail of the things that changed in Peter's life since he revealed to the world his true identity. And so when it came to the time where Peter switched sides, from that point on he was considered a fugitive. So then not only were people looking for Spider-Man, but they also knew to look for Peter Parker. And so while all this is going on, his ex Deborah Whitman writes a book about the relationship and how Peter always had to run off, and she titles it Two-Faced: How Peter Parker Ruined My Life. And she has this huge release coming up. She's doing a book signing and all that. And the truth is, really, even though Peter had to run away all those different times and then ended up breaking up because he would always have to dip out when they're on a date, she's had a long time obsession with the thought of Peter Parker being Spider-Man. And she's dated other men and even been married at one point. But this obsession led to the place to where she had to go seek psychiatric help. And so when everybody, including Peter Parker, adamantly made the attempt to convince her that Peter Parker wasn't Spider-Man, she quieted down for a while. But then Civil War happens. And Peter Parker goes on television telling the world that he's Spider-Man. So after that, she's like, oh, hell no, I gotta tell my story. And so her book release is a huge event, of course. She's doing like a 2-hour book signing, and Vulture is here posted outside the bookstore. And the reason Vulture's out here is because he's been hired by the government who's looking for Peter Parker. And Vulture doesn't know for sure. He's just making the assumption that Peter's gonna show up to this book signing over here at Barnes & Barnes. And I'm sorry, but it just trips me out how like in the comics they have their version of like the real stuff. Like in my Guardians video where they have the shameless plug for the Space Bucks coffee. I don't know, I just like those little things. I think it's funny. But anyway, Vulture's up here on the rooftop, posted up, waiting on Spider-Man. And he's on the comms talking to this mysterious government figure. And he lets him know, hey, I can't just sit here on top of the building waiting for Spider-Man to come, because either I'm going to alert his spider sense and he's going to know that I'm up here, or he's going to have to drop on me because he sees me from afar. So pretty much here, Vulture has to create some space so he doesn't seem obvious and just wing it. No pun intended. And meanwhile inside, people are grabbing a copy of the book to get it signed and whatnot. And you have a disguised Peter Parker who runs into Stephen Colbert. And now they don't say that it's him specifically, but when Peter makes a remark like, oh my God, it's like Nazi Germany, just call the authorities and rat out your loved ones, and passing by, Stephen, well, I'm just gonna call him Stephen. Stephen's like, why is it that bleeding heart liberals like you always want to trot out Nazis whenever you want to demonize a government that's only trying to protect us? You fella? Or on notice. And it's like, who else is going to try to correct somebody from a political standpoint like that? And it's funny because when he tells Peter you're on notice, he's like, wait, what are you talking about? What do you mean? It makes him a little nervous because he's a federal fugitive. And also inside, you got Flash getting reacquainted with Betty Brant. Okay, so at this point in time, Flash does have some memory problems. Like, he still remembers Betty. Like, he knows that they've dated before. He just doesn't remember certain details. And his memory loss isn't because of Iraq. This is before that. He still has his legs. But he had recently come out of a coma from a car accident that he was set up by Norman Osborn. And aside from Peter being here for the book signing, I would argue to say that he's also here to check on Flash. And that's because Peter feels guilty for what Flash has been through. So over a period of time, he just pops up and just keeps an eye on him. Not saying that's the only reason that he's here, but I feel like that's part of it as well. But while Peter's laying low watching everybody catch up, his spider sense starts going off. And it's the Vulture. And at this point, the Vulture just crashing in. He's not sure exactly where Peter is. He just knows that it's highly likely for Peter to be there for Deborah's protection, if nothing else. And when he crashes in, Flash tries to stop him, but this is Flash like pre-Venom, pre-symbiote. He doesn't have any powers or anything like that, so he just gets tossed to the side. And Vulture's game plan is obvious here. He doesn't know where Peter is, so he just goes straight for Debbie in hopes of drawing Peter out, which seems like a pretty solid plan. Until he gets shot. And it's only seconds later that we look over and we see that it's Betty Brant that squeezed the trigger. And the shot doesn't cause any fatal wounds. It doesn't even pierce the armor. It just pushes him back a little bit. And Vulture calls Betty an idiot, saying, don't you think my suit would be armored against small arms? And I know she's thinking right here like, dang, I had one shot. I should have shot him in the head. And Vulture's real close. He's like up in her face. But before he can lay another hand on her, Spider-Man wraps him in webbing and slams him into a pillar. And he tells Vulture, hey, this is a strict no cutting in line policy here, man. Which makes it seem like protocol, like anytime somebody cuts in line, they're just gonna get wrapped up and thrown into the wall. Which really isn't a bad idea, come to think of it. But not at the long, Vulture cuts free and dips through the same hole that he made in the ceiling. And now that they're taking the fight to the air, Vulture is talking all kind of mess to Spider-Man. He's letting him know he's upgraded his suit, he's not gonna be as easy to take down as he's been before. And he even goes as far to brag a bit, telling Spider-Man that, well, the tables are turned now. You know, this time I'm the hero and you're the fugitive. And Spider-Man's like, oh yeah, of course, because heroes attack harmless people in bookstores. Yeah, you're right. And while they're fighting in the air, Vulture scratches Spider-Man on the shin. And this is important because his claws are laced with a powerful hallucinogen that will cause him to pass out. And now, even though that dosage wasn't lethal by any means, Vulture just figured it was enough for him to pass out and fall to his death. But what's crazy is while Peter's falling, Vulture starts feeling weird and he grabs his arm and he's talking to the government agent over the comms telling him, you did this to me. And then he passes out and starts falling too. And as Peter gets closer to the ground, because he started falling first, he's a lot lower and a lot closer than Vulture is at this point. And they're both coming in fast, but Peter's the closest one. And what trips me out is like while they're falling, most people are like, Peter, snap out of it. But Betty pulls out a calculator and tries to calculate the exact time of impact. Because hey, what are friends for, right? But just in time, Peter's body metabolizes the toxin and he swings up right back in the fight with Vulture. But when he gets up close enough, he realizes that Vulture is out cold. And Spidey's like, wait a minute, you're not conscious? Your terminally slow heartbeat gives it away. But no, really, his first thought is that was a trick, but he knew it wasn't because his spider sense wasn't even picking up that Vulture was there. So then Spidey's like, okay, buddy, gotta get you to a hospital. But speaking of hospitals, later on that evening, Deborah goes to meet Betty. And when Betty opens the door, Deborah just has this huge hospital bill with a bunch of zeros on it. And Deborah tells Betty her mother is sick. She also lets her know that she's been out of work for a while and her mother's Medicare is just not cutting it. So when Jameson's people approached her with all that money, she felt like she had no other choice. And Betty's the only person that Deborah would feel comfortable telling this to, because earlier before the book signing, Betty was asking her why she do it. And Deborah never gave her a real answer until now. But following up with the Vulture after Spider-Man dropped him off at the hospital, the doctors tell him what really happened. Okay, now, so remember earlier when he was telling the mysterious government agent over the phone or over the comms that he had set him up? Well, that wasn't true. It turns out that he actually had a stroke. And the doctor's like, hey, I'm just going to shoot straight with you. The left side of your body is suffering temporary paralysis and you're going to have trouble speaking for a while. Because fortunate enough for Adrian, none of the damage was permanent. And Vulture can barely speak here, but he keeps saying, kill me. He wants somebody to kill him. He can't be weak. And to understand this, we got to go back to his younger days when he used to take care of his brother. So now his brother Marcus was in a terrible motorcycle accident where he was paralyzed from the neck down. And with the loss of his limbs, he became very bitter and oftentimes suicidal, even to the point where he asked Adrian to end his life because he felt like he had nothing to live for. And even though Adrian refused to do it, his brother Marcus' words always stuck with him. And he basically told him, you're either strong or you're weak. The weak people are like antelopes or prey, and they're devoured by the lions and vultures of this world. So as Adrian lays there, the doctor lets him know that he's going to step out for a little bit and he'll be back soon. And that an orderly will be in shortly to keep an eye on him and take care of him in the meantime. And as soon as the doctor gets ready to leave, the orderly's coming in at the same time. And as soon as the doctor walks out the door, he's met by Agent Madrox from S.H.I.E.L.D. And Madrox has an interesting background because he's a copy of Multiple Man that went out to study espionage. It's kind of weird. But he's asking the doctor questions about why Vulture's in the hospital, what did Spider-Man do to him. And the doctor tells him from what he can see, it's just old age. But he ain't seen him slam his ass into that wall though, I'm just saying. But back in the room with Vulture, we found out that the orderly is actually Spider-Man using a device to cloak himself in disguise just to get inside the room with Adrian. And Adrian's still in that suicidal state of mind. And he starts to repeat the same speech that his brother gave him, like verbatim. But he adds on to it telling Peter that he's weak and saying that he's lucky that his Uncle Ben died so he wouldn't see what he's become. And then Peter picks up the pillow and Vulture looks at him like, wait, what? Wait a minute. And he puts the pillow over his face. So now keep in mind, Peter is not trying to kill him right here. Because brute strength, like face to face, there's no way that Vulture could have got him off of him if he wanted to. But Peter does this for the sole purpose of just scaring the mess out of him. And it worked. Because Peter tells him, you know, for somebody begging to die, you sure did fight hard for your life. And Peter tells him to rethink that thing that you call weakness in others, because it's actually compassion. And it turns out to be a huge eye-opener for Adrian. But shortly after that, Spider-Man dips out the window before Agent Madrox comes in from hearing all the commotion. And I'm in this one right here. But I think it was huge that Spider-Man looked through the quote-unquote villain and saw the need that was inside. And repeatedly helped this guy who wanted to harm others and himself. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. And be sure to subscribe so you can catch a spill every week. I'll put all the links up so you can check out more. And I'll catch you guys next time. Alright, later.